On Thursday, July 24th, President Donald Trump set his sights on America's quickly growing homeless population. With the writing of a new executive order, Trump is attempting to make it easier for authorities to institutionalize some of the country's most vulnerable citizens, and in doing so, is opening a Pandora's box of legal and logistical nightmares. Welcome to the politics of New America. On the show today, we're talking about Trump's Ending Crime and Disorder on America's Streets executive order and its possible repercussions. I'm your host, Nathan Stone, and with me is producer Josh Carmody.
And here I thought we were going to talk about pedophiles.
Yeah, the options are so great. It's either attacking the homeless, the pedophiles in government, or
allegedly,
or my original intention this week was to focus a little bit more on the redistricting in Texas and the gerrymandering that's going on and how it can affect the midterms, which I know people are thinking about because the American election cycle never ends. But we might save that one for another time because on Thursday, Trump just decided to take the gloves off and fight America's homeless population. And this
picking the easy wins, I guess.
Yeah, this is very on brand. And again, it's a bit of the kind of new Republican playbook that we're going to go over this executive order, and you'll see kind of all of the hallmarks of what Republican policy is these days, which is often unnecessarily cruel and very unusual. So that's what we have in this executive order. It's been a while since we've covered an executive order, so I thought it might be fun.
Getting nostalgic on me.
That's right. Yeah, your mileage of fun may vary here. So how we're going to do this, each executive order is broken down into various sections. And so we're going to kind of hit them both, but we're going to hit all of these sections, but we're going to add some context going through here. And we'll start off with section 1, which is usually a very good place to start because it's the purpose and policy here. So this is what Trump, or whoever wrote this for Trump, has to say.
This is what ChatGPT spit out when some aide far down the rung was finally passed along. Trump's really into asylums right now. He keeps mentioning Bellevue. I don't know.
Yeah. So, endemic vagrancy, disorderly behavior, sudden confrontations, and violent attacks have made our cities unsafe. The number of individuals living on the streets in the United States on a single night during the last year of the previous administration, 274,224, was the highest ever recorded. The overwhelming majority of these individuals are addicted to drugs, have mental health conditions, or both. Nearly 2/3 of homeless individuals report having regularly used hard drugs like methamphetamines, cocaine, or opioids in their lifetimes. An equally large share of the homeless individuals reported suffering from mental health conditions. The federal government and states have spent tens of billions of dollars on failed programs to address homelessness, but not its root causes. Please remember that for later. Leaving other citizens vulnerable to public safety threats. Shifting homeless individuals into long-term institutional settings for humane treatment through the appropriate use of civil commitment will restore public order. Surrendering our cities and citizens to disorder and fear is neither compassionate to the homeless nor to other citizens. My administration will take a new approach focused on protecting public safety. So I know that's a mouthful. There's so much here to unpack. So much here. But this is kind of it. So we start off with the idea that homelessness is on the rise. And that is true. Things have not been going well for a long time in terms of homelessness statistics in the United States and in a lot of countries all around the world because people can't afford housing. It's not hard, actually. It's the leading cause of homelessness worldwide is just access to affordable spaces to live. Now, where I thought we'd kind of start adding some context here is in what do our stats look like in 2025? So right now, there is just a huge increase, and there has been since about 2017 in terms of the homelessness rate. The United States has the worst homelessness rate among industrialized nations. And what we're seeing right now, and this is an estimate, and these are last year's stats. They haven't obviously taken 2025 stats, but the total homeless population was estimated at about 771,000 people, which was an 18% increase from the year before. Now, 64% of that population is sheltered, which means they either are in a shelter program or they're staying with friends and family, but they have no homes of their own. 36% is the unsheltered population. So that is the population that Donald Trump is aiming for. Those are the people who are forced to camp out in parks or, sleep in subways, those kind of things, right? They're the visible homeless. So, and that unsheltered population has jumped 6.9% as well from last year. So this is a huge issue in the United States, quite scarily actually, in terms of public concern around homelessness. 71.2% of Americans reported that they worry about experiencing homelessness themselves. So this is not the difference between the housed and unhoused United States population. A lot of the times is a paycheck or two, right? And we've seen this again and again borne out in other stats, in other reports about how close your average American family is to financial ruin, and usually the answer is scarily close. So some of the worst stats here, and I'm just there's a lot, but there's nearly 150,000 children currently experiencing homelessness. Again, these are all estimates. The homeless population is very difficult to correctly census because, of course, people move around, right? The people are hard to find. But so this should really be at least when I give you these numbers. So families with children actually make up about 33% or a third of all of the homeless in the United States. And the other 66% is single individuals. So this is a problem that is growing, has been growing steadily for, half a decade at least at this point. Longer than that, actually. And neither Republicans or Democrats have been able to fix any of these problems. So what we have instead is this idea of taking specifically the unsheltered homeless population and getting as many of them as possible into long-term institutional settings through the use of civil commitment. Civil commitment sounds so nice, right? It's civil. It can't be bad if it's civil, right?
Well, I think if we've learned anything on this show, that's not true. But
I'm glad you've been paying attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. It is not nice. Involuntary civil commitment refers to forced hospitalization of persons, generally with serious mental illnesses. And this process is generally governed by state laws rather than federal. But it kind of butts heads with the 14th Amendment, which houses the due process clause, right? So it's been in a kind of a legal gray area for a long time. A lot of judges have ruled that you need quite a high level of proof that someone should be, civilly committed before you can do that. And so it's not used in a lot of circumstances because, again, it's so legally gray that it leaves a lot of opportunity for appeals under constitutional grounds of depriving people of their liberty without due process. So when Trump is saying, civil commitment here, what he really means is taking people off the streets and depriving them of their liberty because they have mental illness. And mental illness, again, is not something that's really covered as far as constitutionally. You need to have really good cause to do that. So it's not clear how the Department of Justice can kind of square this circle with the courts. And in a lot of blue states specifically, that bar is quite high that they would have to jump over. Now, Section 2 of the executive order is all about restoring civil commitment. Now, he is tasking the Attorney General to seek, in appropriate cases, always appropriate cases, the reversal of federal or state judicial precedents and the termination of consent decrees that impede the United States policy of encouraging civil commitment of individuals with mental illness who pose risks to themselves or the public, or are living on the streets and cannot care for themselves in appropriate facilities for appropriate periods of time. So what that means is that they'll be looking to interfere with state and federal clauses that require them to show all of this proof that someone should be deprived. And then the people who they're looking to commit, okay, people with mental illness who pose a risk to themselves or the public, that's an easy one to argue. It's less easy to argue living on the street and cannot care for themselves in appropriate facilities. That's really loose language as far as this goes. And what would you say is care, right? How do you argue that legally? Is it because their clothes are unkempt, right? Like, is it because, maybe they don't smell so great? Is that a reason that you can then...
They're coming for the anime conventions. Magic the Gathering players scatter. Just thinking of other things with civil in the name, if people want to know kind of where this will end up, there's something in America called civil forfeiture. And this is where police just take your money because you happen to have a lot of legal tender on you, and they just accuse you of going to do something illegal with it, and they take it and they spend it on urban warfare cosplay bullshit. So if you think they won't stretch this as far as they can and push the boundaries of this, they absolutely will. This is just another tool to look at ICE. They're picking up citizens.
Yeah.
There's people who absolutely should not be getting treated that way. I mean, not that anybody should, but even in just the sense of going after illegal immigrants, they're not only going after illegal immigrants. And if you think that by installing this as law that they'll only go after homeless people that are standing on a corner like screaming at the sun, no, they won't.
That's perfect, because this is part of a pattern we've seen time and time and time again, where American laws, and I know obviously an executive order isn't a law in the same way that legislation is a law, but it's going to have the same overall effect. They come out and they're worded in such a way that if you had a nation of normal, rational people, you could make them work, right? You could be like, oh, okay, this is clearly what this means. We're not going to draw outside the lines here. But so much of American politics is predicated, and especially Republicans, modern Republicans, around, well, it doesn't say we couldn't do it, right? Mm-hmm. So everything needs to be spelled out really, really well, and this executive order is not.
The Trump administration loves the Air Bud rule. Yeah. Like it doesn't say a dog can't play basketball. So
exactly. So that's kind of where we'll leave Section 2. It's not all of Section 2, but it's kind of the main thrust.
Yeah.
So then we get to the third part of this, which is entitled Fighting Vagrancy on America's Streets. I haven't heard vagrancy, I think, since like the 30s, as far as terms go.
Anytime I watch the movie First Blood is when I hear about vagrancy. And it's not painting the cops in a good light, I can tell you that.
Yeah. So what all section 3 is about going after states. And what's really funny about this executive order, I gotta stop saying funny. Nothing about what we do here is funny.
It's not funny.
It's not. It's interesting.
It's a cannibal eating a clown. This tastes funny.
So the states with the largest unsheltered homeless populations also happen to be deep blue states. Specifically, California, which is home to about 30% of the nation's homeless. It's the largest concentration in the country, and New York. So those states, of course, because they share so much of the nation's burden of homelessness, have a lot of very progressive programs to try and mitigate some of the suffering. And so this section 3 is all about going after those states and those programs. So the Secretary of Transportation, along with friends, shall take immediate steps to assess discretionary grant programs and determine whether priority for those grants may be given to grantees in states and municipalities that actively meet the below criteria to a maximum extent permitted by law. So, what he's saying in this is that grants to help with homelessness, federal grants from the Secretary of Transportation, from the Department of Transportation, will only go to states that do the following, which is enforce prohibitions on open and illicit drug use, enforce prohibitions on urban camping and loitering, and enforce prohibitions on urban squatting. So it's putting caveats on federal funding for programs now that you have to take a tough on homelessness approach. So states, for example, like Portland, Oregon, who I remember like Oregon, who had programs around, safe injection sites, for example, those kind of things that have kind of taken off in more progressive places now risk losing some of that federal funding.
The dream of the 90s is alive in Portland.
Dare is back, baby. So it also wants them to enforce standards that address individuals who are a danger to themselves and others and suffer from serious mental illness or substance use, or who are living on the streets and cannot care for themselves, again, through basically committing them to institutionalize them. Now, this is, again, just kind of taking a shot across the bow of blue states who are actually dealing with these problems and kind of telling them to do it my way or the highway.
Yeah.
Do
it this way, or all that federal tax money that you send me, I won't send you any of it back.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Poor California. I feel so bad for California nowadays. They contribute so much to the overall taxes that the United States collects, and they're just every which way the administration can punch down on California. They are doing so.
I mean, just in the last several months, there's been a number of things. I mean, I don't know if we've yet had time to witness the fallout from all that water they wasted during the wildfires that happened in LA. And just other things, like kind of the withholding funds and stuff. And I don't know a lot about Gavin Newsom. But he has been pretty vocal about just standing up for the state. So, he's at least got that going for him. But I'm certainly not going to sit here and sing his praises. I don't know much about the guy.
Yeah. I mean, Newsom's got there's skeletons in that closet like any career politician, but I think overall, I would say he has at least stood up for his state in a big way, which is honestly probably why there's so much kind of targeted his way.
Yeah.
And Section 4 of the executive order actually kind of keeps rolling with those punches, calling redirecting federal resources toward effective methods of addressing homelessness. So that Section 3 there, talking about all the things you have to do now to get federal funding.
Yeah.
This is the real knockout blow here. So this is the Secretary of Health and Human Services shall take appropriate action to ensure that discretionary grants issued by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration for Substance Use Disorder Prevention, Treatment, and Recovery fund evidence-based programs and do not fund programs that fail to achieve adequate outcomes, including so-called harm reduction or safe consumption efforts that only facilitate illegal drug use and its attendant harm. So, again, this is even more so targeting safe sites. These are targeting... harm reduction is such an odd one to start, because, like, there's been documented problems with safe injection sites, and a lot of communities don't like being around them, and it's understandable in certain ways, right? There are certain harms that come from just kind of having these sites, and
yeah, but you park a mobile methadone clinic somewhere, it's gonna eventually get broken into at least once or twice.
Yeah. So, okay, like harm reduction programs on the whole, though, are very inoffensive, and so it's odd to see that they'd be specifically targeted here.
I think it comes down to there is more in the kind of right wing thought process. It's that drug addicts are criminals that like should have just learned to be able to stop themselves from doing drugs. Like there is a kind of there's no compassion for the abuse or pasts that these people potentially have had, and it's not everybody. Some people do just want to get friggin' turned, and that's unfortunate too. But there are a lot of people that when they talk to people living on the street who are doing hard drugs have had hard lives, have lost people, and it's not always a clear cut thing to look at. But I find that the prevailing thought when it comes to the kind of right wing perspective on it is that no, they're criminals. This is what's that the old like cannabis fever or whatever movie?
Yeah. Reefer Madness.
Reefer Madness.
Reefer
It's that. They just think it's that, and it's like,
this is going to do a lot of damage to those programs in states that are most heavily affected by them. Mm-hmm. And the way it's going to do that is kind of the classic method of just starving it of funding, right? Starving these programs. And so states are either going to have to shut down clinics, shut down, treatment facilities, or are going to have to dig deeper into their own pocketbooks, which doesn't always work for states. As we've said on the program before, the federal government can spend money until they run out of money, then they can print more money and spend that money. And they do that on a regular basis. The states can't do that. The states actually have very strict laws about how big their deficits can be, how big their overall debt burdens can be. So a lot of times, even if you have a very progressive government in a state, they literally have no other recourse than to cut programs when their budget's in shortfall. And so this may cause more of those programs to be cut. Now, Section 5 is the last kind of meaty section of this, because Section 6 is our general provisions, which are always kind of the same type of thing. There are disclaimers. Section 5, though, it's interesting because this executive order, some of them kind of they kind of blow their load up front. This one, it's phrasing.
Yeah. Graphic.
Yeah. This one, Section 5 is kind of our climax here. So
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's funny. There needs to be some levity in this.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I'm slacking on this one.
Yeah. You're doing what you can. Look, the material is not there.
It's true. Look, I forgot my harmonica. I don't know a lot of hobo jokes, so I don't know.
So the first part of Section 5 here, the Secretary of Health and Human Services and the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development shall take appropriate actions to increase accountability in their provision of and grants awarded for homelessness assistance and transitional living programs. So this is where the most damage, I think, can be done. And not to minimize any of the other damages that we've already talked about.
Yeah.
Because of this. So these actions shall include, to the extent permitted by law, ending support for housing first policies that deprioritize accountability. Oh, there it is. Just like you said, Josh. It's their own damn fault.
Yeah.
And fail to promote treatment, recovery, and self-sufficiency. Increasing competition among grantees through broadening the applicant pool and holding grantees to higher standards of effectiveness in reducing homelessness and increasing public safety. So here we're going to go on a little bit of a journey, right? Because housing first. Now, I read that, and I'm not someone who is super up on, housing or homelessness policies and what those look like. So I had to kind of figure out what this is to be like to really know if it's going to be an issue. And so housing first is actually a very simple idea, and it's championed by the National Alliance to End Homelessness. And it prioritizes providing permanent housing to people experiencing homelessness. It gives them a place to live. That's what Housing First does. Basically, the argument is, okay, so you may have a dozen or so issues, and maybe they're all serious. But wouldn't it be better to try and deal with those issues once you have a safe place to live and kind of collect yourself, get your life back together, rather than try and, treat drug addiction while you have to live under a bridge? And to me, that's a very good argument. I don't have a lot of issues with that. I think.
Yeah, living under a bridge and being high and trying not to be high. Also, like, people are trying to cross the bridge and you gotta, like, come up with riddles every day. Definitely, like, stressful.
I wasn't sure where you were going with that one, but I like that. All right, yeah. It's basically the idea is the home, providing a home for these people is that foundational step. It gives them something to build on, which then they can leverage into further programming for these folks, like finding work, helping them budget, helping them recover from trauma, helping them recover from drug addiction. Mm-hmm. But it's all about kind of starting this off with, hey, here's a place you can live and you will be safe and you don't have to worry about this one huge massive thing. So then once you've gotten that out of the way, we can start to work through some of the other stuff. And honestly, as far as reducing the homeless population goes, giving them housing is kind of the best way to do that, right? Then you're not homeless anymore. That's one problem solved. That's great, right? And if the person has other issues, then divert them to those programs. But the idea that housing first policies deprioritize accountability is farcical. it's allowing people to become accountable by giving them something that has value in their lives and that can set them up on that right path. What the Republican Party is expecting is the classic bootstrap, right? You pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It doesn't matter if you're living under a bridge, that you've been a victim of abuse or any of these things. You just got to bootstrap that baby. And to think that it fails to promote treatment, housing first, is again ridiculous. It gives people that foundation to go and get treatment, knowing that they have a place to come back and sleep at night.
I think this goes back to the empathy thing that I was talking about.
It very much does, yeah.
The solutions that are currently in place have no system of punishment, and they love the punishment. They want the punishment there. And I think that they're far more inclined to choose a solution that involves harsh punishments for these people, as you said, with the accountability factor, in terms of like, oh no, you did this to yourself. You are the one who takes the drugs, so you need to still be punished for that. So they don't want to give them a house. And then some of the other arguments that you see are about like kind of the state of some of these, halfway houses or apartments or hotels that take on a lot of a larger homeless population. Some of them do get kind of destroyed. People have been living on the street for a long time or have mental problems, aren't necessarily going to know how to take care of a place. But again, I think what you were saying, like getting people off the street first, and then having all the, using the rest of the money to put towards making sure these places stay fixed up, making sure there is staff around who help with mental issues and things like that. But again, that's empathy, and we can't have that, and people just need to be punished.
Yeah, and so that part of it really kind of irked me a little bit, but there's more in Section 5, going after safe consumption sites, and checking to see if they violate federal laws, right? So again, kind of the lawfare approach against people who are trying to do good in their communities. And also they're also looking at freezing funding for so the other part of Section 5 that kind of stopped me in my tracks was that they're going to require federal funding recipients to share data, specifically health and identity data, with law enforcement in circumstances permitted by law, of course, and to use that collected health data to provide both appropriate medical care with for individuals with mental health diagnoses, or to connect individuals to public health resources. But also specifically in sharing them with law enforcement, to both build an active database and check for, of course, outstanding warrants or anything like that. So you're basically turning any federal funded program into a place where people might be afraid to go in case, they get ratted out for some crime or some, something from their past. It's not going to build trust with a community that is probably, frankly, over-policed as it is. So these are the things.
It's a homeless witch hunt.
Yeah.
Which is hard because if they get their hands on a broom, they can fly.
So that is kind of the gist of this EO. So it's a big one, and it's also got a lot of moving parts to it. But the important things are they're targeting state programs, anything that gets federal funding for combating homelessness, and the homeless themselves. Now, something that they fail to talk about when they're talking about, the civil commitment, just very nicely putting them in mental institutions without their consent, is the absolute state of the United States mental health infrastructure. And this strikes me as an EO that we could have seen in the first Trump administration. Mm-hmm. So the first Trump administration didn't have a lot of pluses to it, but one of them was that it didn't really plan things. It just kind of tried to do things and then failed either in the courts or because what they were trying to do, just the infrastructure didn't exist. And unfortunately, enough people learned from that the second Trump administration has been much better in terms of its effectiveness in what it's trying to do. This one, however, cannot possibly work. So there is about 12,012 mental health treatment facilities in the United States as of a 2023 count. And of those, 8,270 are outpatient facilities, which means places where people are for less than 24 hours, mm-hmm. which leaves about 2,700 that are longer term than that. The United States mental health facilities right now are over capacity, sometimes to the tune of about 140% over capacity for beds. Where in the world are you going to put these people?
Well, crank it up to 200%, I guess. I mean, they clearly don't mind. We've seen the detention camp they built in Florida and all these other ICE camps. Like, they overcrowd these things all the time. I don't think they care.
Yeah, and I mean that is a possibility, but they have to know this. This is easily accessible information. Also, it's been this way since at least 2018. This isn't new. This has been, over half a decade long crisis of space in mental health facilities. So what you're left with then, in all likelihood, I think, is if you get the courts to go along with this, right? And the legal implications we haven't really even gotten into, but if you get the courts to go along with this and you start stripping people of their freedom by institutionalizing them, those mental health facilities are either going to completely break down, because a mental health facility is not like a prison, right? Prison has guards, but they're not there to treat you, really. They're there to make sure you stay in prison but in a mental health facility, you should be getting a lot more individual care. And that's going to be impossible. So what I think probably happens is people just get shunted into like these outpatient facilities and then they're back out on the streets. And at that point, do they look at going with the incarceration route, which would be probably an easier path for this administration, where they've just been building, as you say, more and more facilities to incarcerate migrants. It's easy to throw another person in a cage in Florida, right? There's I don't know what the capacity is there, and I'm pretty sure they don't either. But it becomes this kind of nebulous space, right? And it's the same thing that we've seen with a lot of these migrant detention centers, where people just kind of disappear and you don't know where they've gone. Did they go to one of the military detention centers? Did they go to Alligator Alcatraz? Where are these people ending up? And there's no good answer here. The infrastructure for what Trump is trying to do simply does not exist. There's too many homeless people in the United States for them to handle. And obviously they're, I think, not looking at, trying to institutionalize 200-odd thousand people who just happen to, live on the streets. But
Well, time to go upstate to JRFK Jr.'s farm so that you can pick vegetables and learn to get over having drugs in your system.
Honestly, they're going to have to be creative about this, and creative in the worst way possible. Even if it was 20,000, that would still break this already strained system. It's just not feasible. So, from a logistics standpoint, it's not. It doesn't work. From a legal standpoint, it gets a little bit more dangerous. So, what do we say on this program? America, please write things down in your laws. Do not rely on norms. This is how we got into this mess, is relying on norms, relying on reasonable people to remain reasonable for centuries. Didn't happen. Sorry, guys. And so now we're in trouble. So our friends at the Supreme Court, friends of the show, they have kind of talked about and established minimum burden of proof as far as involuntary civil confinement goes. And some states have higher standards than the Supreme Court does. But a lot of the arguments around if you can confine someone, institutionalize someone like this, go to the 14th Amendment, the due process part. And the Supreme Court has never ruled that the 14th Amendment guarantees any of the protections, right? So, for example, of a person facing civil confinement, right to a counsel, right to independent expert testimony, right to a jury trial. Because civil confinement is different than a normal criminal case, right? We're not sure if these rights kind of also apply to civil confinement trials. And with the current Supreme Court, is this the time we want to find this out? But it likely will get there if all of these plans come to fruition, because there will be challenges to this immediately. And so it's a whole Pandora's box there that might end up weakening 14th Amendment protections for all Americans if the Supreme Court was to rule in the administration's favor.
Those slippery dogs, they'd never do that.
No, I know. It would be so out of character for them. So I guess what I'm saying, Josh, is this is a really, really bad time to be homeless in the United States. And it's probably about to get a whole lot worse. Although, if you're looking for silver linings, the big one is this is an executive order with no coherent plan behind it. Mm-hmm. And if you know the Trump administration and the power players in the executive, it might not necessarily go as far because of that, right? This is something that could fizzle. There are a lot more policies from this administration that I consider to be scarier just because they seem to have been better put together. Mm-hmm. This is pie in the sky nonsense. But it is just dangerous enough if they really try and go through with it, or if they use it as a tool to break either, the mental health facilities in the United States or overwhelm courts, right? So they can break it and then say, oh, look, this is broken. We need to fix this. Maybe it's something like that. But honestly, like reading it out here, it's what they're trying to do is awful, but what they actually can do might not be as bad. So yay.
Yeah. I believe it was Canada's own Nathan Fielder who said, and remember, kids, the next time someone tells you the government wouldn't do that, yes, they would.
All right, folks, that's where we're going to leave this one. I know it's really in the weeds here, but these executive orders are important. Trump likes to govern almost exclusively through executive orders. If it wasn't for the big, beautiful bill, Congress would have done mostly nothing this in the last 6 months. So these are always good to keep an eye on. And so if you've been hearing about it in the news, I hope we've kind of broken it down in a way that was if not happy, at least enlightening. So we'll see you next time. Ugh. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe, give us a 5-star rating on your podcast platform of choice, and tell all your friends. The Politics of New America is hosted by Nathan Stone and produced by Josh Carmody. You can follow us on Blue Sky at Politics New America.
This has been a Haunted Mouse production. Cut that out.